Welcome everybody, I'm Mamuka Kuparadze and I'm going to be the anchor in our studio, and we are going to talk about the conflicts in Georgia, and to be more correct we will speak about the involvement of Georgian side representative in conflict resolution in a civic dialogue. And today we have our guest, our Gamakharia, Peaceful and Business Caucasus Director Levan Todia, Society for New Generation, Mr. Paata Zakareishvili, Grigol Robakidze University Professor, and Salome Adamia, Progress Language. She is the coordinator of the project. So before we speak about the involvement of Georgians and in your project, so I'd like to give floor to Mr. Paata Zakareishvili. He's very experienced in civic dialogue since 1992. During the war, he was involved in the process of exchange of prisoners of war, and in 1994, since 1994, he has been participating in civic dialogue. He has contacts both with the Abkhaz and with Ossetians, and actually conflict was different during its course, and so how can you just describe the conflict situation status today? Yes, after 1991, after the demise of the USSR, and unfortunately Georgia was also just concerned, both in terms of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and after that the breaking point was 2008, and before 2008, more or less successfully, step by step, civic dialogue and political dialogue actually was in progress. I mean, we had different formats, Geneva format, and Abkhaz and Ossetian societies had a feeling that their recognition would never occur, and actually they put up with the idea that sooner or later they would have to reconciliate with Georgians, and therefore they asked for more actually just benefits. I mean, just in other words, they tried to deal with Georgia better. But 2008 tragedy substantially just turned everything upside down, and Russia had an opportunity to occupy Georgia even further. And I mean, Kodori Gorge and different areas Russia occupied, and unfortunately, Russia just recognized these occupied territories, and the situation substantially changed, and actually they don't deal with us now, they deal with the world, because they are just partly, I mean, by Russia, Venezuela, Russia, I think, and a few small states recognize that. Now they just claim that recognition process started, and now in Kurdistan illegal referendum was held. So it means that I mean the ghost of secessionists actually is moving around the world, and it impacts the dialogue because they have already just different claims, and now they just urge us to seize this role, but we say that nothing has been changed, and those goals for Georgia, which was 2008, actually remain, but still now they see the reality in different ways. They just urge us to look at the reality from different point of view. Actually, it impacts the political dialogue, but civic dialogue, as you know, definitely depends on political dialogue. So, and now if politicians actually allow just the civic sector, of course, civic sector will have just more opportunity to find a common language. So, and this topic which you and Mr. Levan are based away is this is one of the most rare cases Abkhazians actually are willing to cooperate on a medical service. And so please just briefly tell us about the dynamics and how things are moving on in this direction. So we have been involved with this project. It's medical service delivery project, part of the state policy developed by Georgia's government, and it is working, but other components unfortunately are not working. But medical project, in my opinion, is successful because it is, to begin with, is based on the needs of Abkhazian and Alsatian nationals. This is the feedback to the challenges. So we don't need to actually beg anyone. Just kind of come down here and please just go through a treatment course. Actually, they themselves address us, and definitely we react as the way just it should be for, considering given the Georgian hospitality. And through this mediation, we try to help them in high-quality medical clinics, and actually they are not shy to attend such events, and they have no problem about expressing their gratitude. And it should be noted that in this project, one at the same time, different projects are involved. Both state structures and actually NGO institutions, and both Georgian and Abkhazian communities, because there are just many connections, relatives between two communities, old friends and things like that. And but for the activities of civic sector, I think it would be hard for the government to actually to conduct the events and measures like that. But for you, yes, of course, there are a lot of obstacles, and let me just come up with some figures. Out of 100 patients, only before it was 20-30%, but now it's about 10% who would fit these requirements of referral program. And actually they are just they settle for just some samples and other services. So in terms of quantity, our civic sector serves actually more patients than the government. If our patient will need the assistance of referral program, then we, on their behalf, we try to broker, and there is cooperation, nice cooperation. I think Mr. Paata will confirm that very often, the reconciliation refugee minister actually acts as one of the stimulation in terms of involvement of Abkhazians in this program. So very often, for example, they don't have enough money, the patients, and then the ministry just gets involved and settle these issues. Daily problems. Yes, and of course, just we are also involved. We try to mediate and broker, and I think it works. So now let's see the wrap-up presentation of your project, and let's ask Mr. Levan about this. In the conference hall of the National Library, the final report was wrapped up in terms of referral service. NGOs, Peaceful and Business Caucasus, and with the help of these organizations, the patients use the referral service of medical clinics in Tbilisi and in other cities of Georgia. Last year, about 550 persons used the service, and according according to the survey, majority are happy with quality of service, and the patients just apply for medical services with different problems. So today it's very important, and we have solved this program nicely. I mean, hepatitis C, and the issue of hepatitis C just is very urgent for Abkhazians, because we heard from Galley doctors when we had some meeting that just on average almost every week a young person dies just because of the use of drugs or some other things. The event was attended by representatives of international organizations, ambassadors and NGOs, and the project beneficiaries as well. The project is supported with a joint program COBERM of EU and United Nations. This partnership is very important because at the same time it has two great goals. One is humanitarian, I mean saving and protecting humans' life, but it also strongly impacts the transformation of conflict between the peace building between conflict-divided societies and people. Current project started 2016, and October 15 just will be officially closed down. So, Levan, please, can you tell us something about the dynamics of this project? You have been some time involved with the project, and so patients come, address, and the trust is better, or what's going on? Well, when this process started, I think it started 2005, 2006. And 2-3 patients actually just would come down, and maybe just 10 people would come down per year, and then the number increased. Then 20-30 patients. You're talking about the year when war just broke out in South Ossetia, right? Yes, it was less during war, and then we had some kind of gap, and then people just came over again. Then a referral program was created, this one, and definitely more people came here. 2008 we served just 28 patients, that was all. And after that the number increased so much, now just 600, 700 patients. Just through the organization of ALO, this is quite, reality. Actually, we have a rubric in our program when our colleagues from Ossetia and Abkhazia, they send us news about most important events in Abkhazia and what they think for our viewers to know about the processes there. Now I'll ask Nino Gilashvili, our journalist, to present this rubric. Let me welcome everybody. Studio traditionally continues highlighting important news from Sukhumi and Tskhinvali. This way we try to fill the gap in Georgian media, and our Abkhazian Georgian colleagues, especially for Studio Room, choose interesting events. This time our Abkhazian colleague highlighted news about culture. 13 to 17 September in Pitsunda, Organ Music International Fifth Festival was held. Pitsunda Concert Hall is just traditional location for this concert, and is one of the most important music festivals of the country. Abkhazian, Russian, and European musicians participated. The program just covered different types of music, and during the 5 years existence of the festival, it turned into one of the most important cultural events. So September 1st, the Muslims of Abkhazia celebrated the greatest Muslim, one of the most important celebration, Kurban Bayram, and the celebration traditionally was held in Gudauta and Sukhumi mosques with the mass prayer. In Sukhumi, the room was not enough, and 300 citizens had to pray outside nearby the mosque. This year, the first bell rang September 4. And after the major overhaul in Sukhumi, public school number 3 accepted about 600 school students. And President of Republic Raul Hajimba and other officials congratulated children with new academic year. 87th theatrical season within the framework of Abkhazian Festival just was opened with premiere Muhajirism in Abkhazian Drama Theater. Muhajirism was a performance, a play, first Abkhazian drama written by Samson Chamba 1920, which describes the tragedy of Abkhazian people in the 19th century after the war between Russia and Turkey. After the Muhajirism, 700,000 people had to flee the country. This was a terrible tragedy when Abkhazian nation just happened to be on the verge of disappearance. That was the news digest from Sukhumi. We have offered it to you unchanged with direct translation. Now let's speak about the important events in Tkhin Valley. And it's 27th anniversary of the formation of the Republic, and in the main square of Tkhin Valley, military parade was held, and as always, the Republic had been preparing for a few months for this day. We have gone long and a hard way, but today we may celebrate the independence of the Republic. Our Republic is developing, and we are building actually the facilities of social economic importance, said President Bibilov in his speech. Among guests were representatives of North Alania, President Vyacheslav Bitarov, and Russian delegation just under the guidance of the North Caucasus Affairs Ministry, Mr. Kuznetsov, and it was also attended by bikers, night wolves. Mr. Alexander Hiruk, their head, presented a bike to Mr. Bibilov. The Jewish community of Tkhin Valley, who lived before, came to Tkhin Valley, and with sense of nostalgia, look around the people where they worked, had fun, and lived. Actually, for them, their life is divided into two, before and after, and they left Tkhin Valley back in the 90s when the situation was destabilized in the USSR. For the first time, I came back to Tkhin Valley after a long time dreaming, and I came to my hometown where I grew up, and it's very nice as I can see a city just developed and flourished and prosperous. President Anatoly Bibilov met with community of Jewish people of Tkhin Valley and noted that the 90s were very hard not only for the Jewish people but for everybody living in Southeast Asia. Also stated that more than 5,000 people expressed a wish to get passports of Southeast Asia, but this procedure is temporarily stopped. September 25, a sewing factory was solemnly opened, and the relevant shop. It was attended by President Anatoly Bibilov. In the shop, Batika products were presented, and it is designed for any taste, for anybody. And now about 500 people are employed by Batika. First consumer of the new shop was President Bibilov. Let me remind that we offer the digest unchanged. Despite that, on a few subjects, the vision of studio may be different. Our colleagues continue their work, and we will come up with the novelties in the next program. So let me continue our discussion, and let me introduce our guests in our audience. The gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen are interested in Abkhazian issues, participants of the projects, and so I'd like to ask you to be more active and to involve into the dialogue during the program. So Salome is a participant of Georgian Abkhazian meetings, and this project which you are carrying out, I think, has come from you, from young people, and then you just gain support. And please tell us more about your project. First of all, let me welcome every one of you, and I'm very happy that introduction of this project is occurring within the framework of your studio program, and we have talked about the importance of involvement of young people into the peace processes, and luckily our initiative and the Reconciliation Resource British organization, our goals coincide with British Reconciliation Resources, to extend the involvement of young people, which was a priority for this organization, and our project is part of the larger project of Reconciliation Resource. And the idea is a free exchange of information and ideas. I think this is what young people mostly need. And on behalf of our project, I think that it actually answers the goal. The language of progress is a dialogue, which is, I think, most relevant and most important. And during long years, we participated in different formats in Georgia, and actually, we always experience a deficit of information when we speak about the importance of the dialogue and the filling this information gap. I think we will partly be able to do that within the framework of the project. And within the framework of the project, we decided to move about in a few directions. One of them is a public lecture cycle in Tbilisi, on the permanent basis, and every month, last week of every month will be held in discussion hall of National Public Library, and we will host different reporters involved in the peace process. In this case, Nanitashvili was our first reporter, public lecturer, who is a sociologist and has a long-time experience of peace projects, despite that she is too young, and she is trying her best to implement innovative technologies in the process of development of peace dialogue. And more specifically, so what would be the contact like with the Abkhazian side? What would be the form? At this stage, our primary goal is to have more dialogue within our own community. I think what we really need, we really need the dialogue and discussion about this issue. So, to a certain extent, we want to get more and more young people involved with the discussion. Potential young people who would be able to participate in the dialogue in future with Abkhazian associations. Of course, it needs hard work. Yes, we had different projects and formats, but in fact, for example, on the last research, 1996. They just explored and studied attitude of young people, and the result of this the research actually show the less priority attitude among young people. So we think that at this stage most important is the extension of dialogue within our country in order to be more prepared for other formats. And this way, except for the public lecture cycle, we are planning to hold lectures in the regions, and we'd like to cover 6 university towns of our country, where we will try to bring some informational knowledge with the help of our partners. And these training seminars are planned into 2 phases, 2 stages, because we don't want to involve people short term. And another direction is this is pilot university meetings, which will be held only in Tbilisi, and we will try to reflect these dynamics in regions as well. And most importantly, we will try to actually include some competition and to increase the interest level of young people, these issues, and we will try. We are trying actually to provide the maximum involvement of young people. It's very interesting. Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask our audience. So I'd like to ask you a question. I mean, the project about medical service. So this is the only successful project during 25 years. Everybody knows that. And therefore, is there any interest shown by governmental structures just to take over the project? Because in about 1 year, the financing of the project must be interrupted actually from international foundations. Yes, I understand the question. It's actually a good question. The government has taken over the project already, but just like any government, it has regulations. I mean, what kind of services would be it delivering to Abkhazian and Ossetian friends of ours, but just more extended service actually is needed for them, which government actually is not able to provide. And actually it's possible, and I think we, civic sector, we want very much actually the government to take over the burden, and I think government will have to employ social workers to take over this activity. It's a good idea because Coburn, for example, next year, as we heard today, and not only today, will finish its mission in Georgia, and except for Coburn, not a single international organization supports similar projects. So we raise the issue about development of social philanthropy, but until before it starts functioning, the project which was started positively may finish negatively. So there is another obstacle for people just beyond the conflict line. I think it would be rather awkward. They would avoid actually addressing just governmental structures. Yes, it's an important thing. It was especially hard before. I think Levan will agree with me. Patients are just don't even dare to actually voice their identity, to show their identity. And do you think that any one of them just would come and apply governmental structures for medical help? So, and in this case, NGOs are something like a buffering area. Kuparadze, and that's what I wanted to say. I think it would be better rather than for the government taking it over. I think it would be good if NGOs actually keep on doing that. I know that people would be more willing to address NGOs. So I would comment that David is right, because we have been cooperating for a long time, and it's like that. But it would be good if government develop actually this cooperation, and without governmental coordination, not a single project, which is called peace building, conflict resolution. This project actually, it's we don't do it independently. Just on the level of just volunteers only. It must be conducted under the coordination of the government. Just health ministry and internal ministry, so that civic society would be able to build a good project. But so far, coordination is not happening around. So you mentioned Coburn, but let me just explain that Coburn is a joint project of European Union and United Nations. That actually implicates trust in peace building and just prevention of and now just let me ask our journalist Nino Gelashvili, who will get us familiar with media monitoring. What was happening during 1 month in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Just like in previous months, Georgian media, compared to South Ossetia, more often highlighted Abkhazian issues. And we didn't register any hate speech towards Ossetians and Abkhazia. That's for the topics. 27 September, all just media actually called to the day of the fall of Sukhumi. Politicians made their statements, and heroes of the war were remembered. But according to Absney.ru rule in Abkhazia, they are just talking about the inauguration of new custom point, which will be subject to Russian customs administration, and Russia's defense ministry for free handed over to Abkhazian defense ministry military property, but specifically property is not specified. And Georgian media is still highlighting crime issues. Representative of so-called Gudauta Church Council the criminals to hand over their guns and weapon voluntarily during 1 month, and everyone who will hand their guns over will be financially awarded. It was according to Abkhazian Republic, a newspaper, and Abkhazia reacted to the statements of international organizations, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Abkhazia calls upon the World Commonwealth to just say no to practice of double standards, saying that Georgia makes Abkhazia to be internationally isolated. They are especially concerned participation of Georgian soldiers in multinational military drilling because they see it as a danger. So we are concerned about military training activization, and it shouldn't be, but stated that during the last 3 months, 2 large-scale military drilling were held in Georgia, just on the background when Georgian side still refuses to sign non-use of force agreement. End of the citation. That was all, and see you next time. Thank you. Let's continue our discussion, and let me talk about one painful issue. I am also the member of the Civic Dialogue. Actually, I also highlight the Civic Dialogue, and one painful issue is that our partners actually try to more and more just let's say, make their identities less recognizable. They talk more and more about their identities. So how is that thing going? Yes, our partner, Mr. Levan. Yes. No. Actually, I think they did not do it before, but now they even just go and address governmental officials, and they try to get some pass. They openly say that, for example, they are going to Georgia for treatment reasons, and actually officials don't dare to say no, because if they say no, then potential patients would say that, okay, if you don't allow to go, then you help me. Just President Putin, Russia's President Putin was in Abkhazia, and they talked with Mr. President of Abkhazia about insurance, but our friends say that this our just Abkhazian friends that this insurance actually doesn't mean a lot to them. This is just actually it covers only just minor costs. So Mr. Paata, please tell us how can we make our dialogue more transparent, and why is it happening that our just relationships are more and more disguised? It's not initiative of Georgian side. I mean, what you are saying and what I see is that Russia's influence both in Abkhazia and South Ossetia is increasing. I think you know, even in Ossetia. Even in Russia, actually, NGOs have some problems, and the most active part of NGOs are stated as agents of foreign countries. They have actually a legal term, or Russia has a legal term, and they're treated negatively. And in Russian media, we can often hear some anonymous letters just against activities of civic sector, just acting in Abkhazia and Ossetia. And the Russians are concerned that in Abkhazia, officials don't concern actually civic societies as they do in Russia. And just like previous de facto government during Khajimba, for example, they're not going to decrease their just NGO sector, civic sector, but they are careful themselves, not to stand out after the foreign trips. For example, they through the Pso River, when they just come back to Abkhazia, Russian border just officials actually interview them, question them, interrogate them, and they don't even hide that. They're telling these people who travel from Abkhazia that they're telling them to warn actually their relatives. Because they just, these interviews continue 2 or 3 hours, and so what can ask during 2-3 hours? One of the same person. A person who had been traveled 2 or 3 years earlier, and he had been already just questioned. He's again or she's again actually just is questioned anytime just he or she crosses the border. And actually, I always just call our international friends to contribute to because the South associations actually are almost closed in. I always call upon our international friends to contribute to development of civic sector. And Cobram is not stopping. Actually, according to my information, I think they are going to be modified and they will continue their work. And let me comment that, of course, civil sector and state sector cooperation is very important. When I was a state official, this cooperation was very close, and now I think it is going on. But saying that all patient, as time goes by, people just go to clinics and hospitals, and actually, I can dare say that. All documents go to the ministry, and our reconciliation ministry actually confirms, sends a letter to health ministry and confirming that these people are subject to referral program. Wherever a person comes from, finally the documentation of him or her just gets gathered in reconciliation ministry. So 20 to 30% come from civic sector, and more of them come from hospitals, because people often come here, they are used to it, they found the way, so they bring their just relatives, friends, and for example they have some acquaintances in hospitals, and 20% directly address us. And I can't say they're afraid of coming, because at least once a week 2 or 3 people would come, and they would say that they would want to see the minister and thank him. So they would come to the ministry. Some of them did not. I would just go outside, we would sit outside in the cafe. I was always interested, and everyone who would come and they thanked me. It was, I think, actually a very nice feeling. And besides, I was interested in what was going on there, and we would just sit down and talk. So saying that they're afraid of our government, I think I hear it for the first time. Of course, actually. For example, some people when we were arrested, for example, if someone said that for example, someone said he was in Georgia and he was arrested, but they would just protest that, for example, unless you just treat us, so what can we do just if we don't go to Georgia? And for different reasons, I'm very happy that this harmony just really exists between the government and the civic sector. I cannot say that someone works better, someone works worse. This is a unique symphony where all structures are involved and harmoniously cooperate. I mean, just clinics, hospitals, and representatives of the government. So I don't remember any gap between these three sides. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is limited. I wanted to talk about one interesting topic. But let me just please, actually, sorry for the interruption. I mean, the guests of the program pointed out that involvement of the government is very important. And very important is the decisions of these people who just represent the government. And one of the most important aspects of a project is that we try to cooperate with different political parties on the youth level. And actually, our experience showed that young people who in different times, different formats were involved, they are taking different process, different views, visions. It means that their just movement into the real politics is happening very speedily, and our goal is to work with them. It is most important in order just for them to formulate and to get their just peace visions formulated with them. So all this, of course, is interlinked. And thank you very much that you are, of course, just using your platform and you just highlight these issues. Yes, I think we need to train our just young people actually in every sector and to use the accumulated resources and knowledge which we have already accumulated for our program. Thank you very much for coming here, and hopefully we will meet in future, and we will have a lot of things to share with our viewers. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.